Hi, you all. I am so excited about this conversation today. Not just because of the title, but God, which is always relevant, but also because of what I'm going to circle the conversation around is one of my favorite people of all times, and that is Albert Einstein. And that's what really prompted the vlog for today, this But God vlog. Anybody who knows me knows I'm a huge Albert Einstein fan. If I was to meet someone from the past, he would be it for sure to have those conversations and ask those millions of questions from his perspective. I've always been a huge fan of his just because I love how he but how he acknowledges, appreciates God, and appreciates science, and the fact that these are not separate entities. I've always been a fan of him for that, for just being so brilliantly smart and yet humble enough to acknowledge God in the process. And that has always been just a huge appeal for me. As I've learned more about him, what I really love about Albert Einstein, in addition to that, is just the unadulterated complexity of his life. And I believe that it just really illustrates how all of our lives has this level of complexity, of imperfection. Like, as great as he is, if I were to be a groupie, I would be an Albert Einstein groupie. And as great as he is, you still see, wow, dude, you were messing up, right? And yet God was able to still make him to be not only just this amazing contribution to the U.S., to where he, was originally living, but to the entire world. And not just during that season, but in this season, years after he has passed, we're still benefiting from what he has shared with the world, or what was shared through him at the very least, through quantum physics, things that people are still discussing today, still trying to figure out today. He opened that impetus for it. But anyways, I say all that to say, the But God is, really looking at his story. If you've seen it, you know that he was developmentally, delayed. So he didn't learn to speak very early. He took a very long time to speak. He took a long time to walk. And then after that, you might say, okay, he took off. But even later on in life, he had different challenges. So his challenges early on, he was developmentally delayed and turned out to be this just brilliant IQ genius. But as an adult, he seemed to have had ADD. He was distracted. Dude was distracted for sure. And so it was hard for him to keep attention to this when he's thinking about that, this, and the other. And today, we would want to prescribe him with ADD. You would probably have doctors trying to give him Ritalin, right, and make him think differently. But he had these symptoms that we would have considered ADD for all of his life. And on top of that, he had EQ challenges. He graduated and he was the only person in his class who couldn't find a job. And his dad was even trying to intervene, trying to get him work. Nobody wanted to work with him in their research labs because he was a big know-it-all, and he had a hard time collaborating with other people. And so I say all that to say he had some issues. Albert Einstein had issues, right? And interestingly, part of the story, if you read his story or know parts of his story, his divorce and how he got his divorce, he told his wife, hey, if you grant me this divorce, which obviously was far more complicated situation back then, for good reason, I'll give you the money from this Nobel Peace Prize that I am going to win. Not that he had or that they told him. No, but it's just I'm so brilliant, I'm going to win it, right? And it wasn't just that he's so brilliant, because I thought this is so interesting. This man is foretelling his future, of what God has for him, is how brilliant he was. And it was probably about 13 years, 17 years later, I can't remember the exact number, but he did, in fact, obviously, we know, won this Nobel Peace Prize. Not something very common. It's not like I can say, hey, I'm going to work and save money for this and give it to you. No, this Nobel Peace Prize has so many different dynamic factors and so many people who have an opinion on it. And so for him to predict that with the accuracy that he did is just amazing in itself. But he did in fact win it, and he did in fact keep his word, right? and he gave her the money from the Nobel Peace Prize. And when I look at his story, and I haven't finished his story, but from what I've heard thus far, what I see is like just God's, blueprint all over it. Like, I know for me, a lot of times I want to pour all this energy into something, and then next thing I know, God's like, hey, come get this over here. Like, so yeah, I'm just toiling and toiling for him just to be like, hey, just come get this over here. Really, God? Like, you didn't tell me that. I could just save so much time. And so I feel like that's just how God moves. He wants you to know, like, this is me. Don't get confused. This is me. And when I look at Albert Einstein's life, that's what I see, like, just God's blueprint all over his life. Like, I'm going to have allow you to be developmentally delayed, just so that there's these different ways that you can come out, right? That you can be manifested on this world, and not to take for granted when I'm giving you this genius. Which I don't think he did, just based upon the way he seemed to have communicated. But, I'm sure he had to have felt like this is something, that God is delivering me to, because I wasn't clearly always like this. And even with him having that difficulty of getting a job, yes, he was brilliant. He's probably the most brilliant person, but even he could not get a job during that season. So that was God saying again, like, well, the humility, like, I need to have a part of this. And the Nobel Peace Prize, like, I personally believe, like, yeah, he was brilliant, but there are a lot of people who are brilliant. And I believe it was beyond him just knowing he's going to be the smartest guy in the world, to get this Nobel Peace Prize, because the smartest people don't always get the Nobel Peace Prize, right? But he knew it was coming. Not only did he know, but he knew like 17 years prior to it coming. So I say all that to say, but God, you look at a situation and it looks like one way, and then God has this whole other story to it. I'm talking to myself with this one. But God has this whole other story to it. So just hold on and see what the but God is for your life, for the lives of those around you and that situation. And I hope that you're blessed by this conversation. And if so, please give a like and share with those around you, and have a good one.